Well, vote counting is underway in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's election commission has clarified that it is now a two-horse race, with the voters' second choice to be taken into account. Halfway through the counting in the polling divisions, and there's very little between the two leading contestants, which are Dissanayake and Sajith Premadasa. As of now, leading contestant Dissanayake share has crossed the 40% mark. Premadasa has reduced the margin. He now holds just over 34% of the vote. The votes have so far been counted for 121 out of the 160 polling divisions. Well, since no contestant holds a 50% majority mark, Sri Lanka's election commission has confirmed that a second preference vote count is underway. All contestants other than Dissanayake and Premadasa have been eliminated. In Sri Lanka's election system, voters can mark one contestant on the ballot or rank three contestants in order of preference. If no contestant gets 50% or more of the vote, a second round of counting factors in the preferences of voters whose first choice did not make it to the top two. Counting is underway amid tight security. The Election Commission has been praised for holding what many observers described as the most peaceful elections in Sri Lanka. The big focus remains the three anticipated preferential contestants: Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, main opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, and Marxist-leaning challenger Dissanayake. The election is seen as a referendum on Rajapaksa's successor Ranil Wickremesinghe, who has restored some stability through austerity policies backed by the IMF. On the other hand, the measures, including tax hikes, have left millions struggling to make ends meet and are unpopular with many voters. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Dissanayake is joining us live on the broadcast from Colombo. Hi Dasuni, now you've been tracking the polls with us since morning. The Sri Lankan presidential race is into a runoff, with Dissanayake crossing the 40% mark and Premadasa just under 34%. A close race indeed, and perhaps Dasuni, it all comes down to the second preference vote now. Talk to us more about that.
Absolutely, it is now finally a two-horse race between NPP's Dissanayake and the Samagi Janabalavega's Sajith Premadasa. Like you rightfully pointed out, Teresa, this is going to come down to how the preference votes have turned out. What we really need to think about is, of all of these votes that were casted, how many of them have in fact casted their preferences. Keep in mind, this is the first time in Sri Lanka where such preferential systems are coming into effect to decide the country's next president. A lot of citizens, a lot of Sri Lankans, especially when you look at the older generations, they're quite used to just going to the polls and marking a cross in front of a candidate. However, this time, there was a bit of talk about marking your first, second, and even your third preference. So we will know in a few hours as to how many of Sri Lankans went to the polls and marked their preferences.
Right, Dasuni, this is the first time in Sri Lanka that the presidential race has rather transcended into a second round. The atmosphere is clearly heating up in Sri Lanka. A lot of firsts this time around. If you can tell us perhaps what is happening in the Dissanayake and the Premadasa camp right now with the race, like you mentioned, coming down to a two-horse race in Sri Lanka.
We were at a prominent counting center here in Colombo, which is the Royal College of Colombo, and we did see a lot of counting officers now leaving to their homes, and we had the opportunity to kind of speak to them, and they told us that they've finished counting even the preferential votes, like it's a done matter now, and they're heading to their homes all that is left is for these voting centers or these counting centers to take in those final results and send it across to the Election Commission so that they can send it across to media to be aired on live TV and other forms of media. With regards to how both of these parties are feeling, we can clearly see that the National People's Power Movement, headed by Anukumar Dissanayake, is quite confident that he will be Sri Lanka's next president, which is why factions and members of that camp have now come forward and spoken to local media and other.
Right. Right, there seems to be some technical glitch there, and that was our correspondent Dasunia Thoda joining us live from Colombo, giving us a brief of the two-horse race in Sri Lanka right now. It is perhaps a race between NPP's Dissanayake and Sajid Premadasa now. We will be tracking the results very closely.